So this is fun. School started back up and now traffic's just frustrating. So anyway, since I'm sitting here not going anywhere, I was thinking about different things and it reminded me of a story. Pretty sure I broke my tailbone. I've mentioned before I lived in Colorado for a while, and the first couple of years I just lived there. I had roommates and I would have this traveling schedule where I would be just gone for weeks at a time and then I would come back, and theoretically I was back home for a week just off, nothing to do, and that was my schedule. That's not usually how it worked out, but that's for another time. So one of my roommates, he would have, I think it was Wednesdays off. So in the middle of the week, he'd have Wednesdays off. And so we would do things on Wednesdays sometimes when I was home and I wasn't working. And so one day I got home, it was probably a Sunday, and he was like, oh man, you know, it was winter, and he was like, oh, we need to go snowboarding. And I was like, I've never been snowboarding. He's like, oh man, you're gonna love it, it's great. So my other roommate lent me his snowboard, his boots. The guy I went snowboarding with, his wife lent me her snowsuit. She had like the, you know, the bibs and a coat separately, and it fit me perfect. We were like the same size. So, and it wasn't like super girly or anything like that, so it didn't make me feel really awkward. And this was, I don't know, probably 8 years ago. I was a much younger, I felt much younger. So anyway, we go, middle of the week, we go to Loveland Pass, or Loveland Ski Area, whatever you call it, and it's, you know, especially then, super cheap. We go up there, and again, I've never been snowboarding before, didn't know anything about it other than that for my whole life since I was little, watching the X Games and stuff. I was like, yeah, snowboarding's my thing. It's just so dumb. Again, as a kid, just thinking, oh yeah, this is my thing that I want to do, and I'm going to do it, and it's going to be awesome, and I'm going to be awesome at it. Just dumb. But you're a kid, and you don't know that your thoughts are dumb when you're a kid. So, you know, I'm an adult now, and I'm like living this stuff out. So I go with my roommate, and he's like trying to show me stuff, and we go up to the top of the bunny slope, and I'm just like, no, didn't realize how, you know, you have an expectation of something and you have whatever it actually is when you actually get to do that thing. And so I didn't have the expectation that the snow was actually ice, basically, which I know there's, you know, what the slope actually is, and then you'll have powder if you're there when there's powder. Like, I understand all that now, at least to a degree. I didn't understand that up until that point, and so I'm like, wow, this is really, really slick. And I'm like just trying to get my other foot in the binding and struggling, and man, it was rough. And go down the bunny slope a couple of times, and I fall, you know, and my roommate's trying to like explain this to me. We go down the bunny slope, which is, you know, maybe 60 yards of 1% grade, maybe. Like, really, it's a bunny slope, it's chill, and I'm struggling, and I'm already wiped out, you know, 3-4 times down this thing maybe. And he's like, yeah, I think you're ready to go down like a blue line from up the top. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, you're doing great. And I was thinking, even then, I was like, I sure don't feel like I'm doing great. But you know, he's been doing this for a while. He knows what he's talking about, so I should just trust him, you know. And so we get in the big lift, go up to the top of the mountain, and he's like, oh, we'll go, you know, just follow me. And I'm like, all right. And so the short version is, it was a disaster, right? I'm just like struggling to, you know, stay up and not smack my face is what I'm thinking is gonna happen, you know, into the side of the mountain, which, you know, I just had recently learned, hey, this is much more like ice than it is snow. So I'm going down this mountain super slow, oftentimes just kind of like skidding. After I fell down, I'm skidding like on my knees or on my butt, and probably 80% of the way down, I start having like a decent go, you know, without falling, and I'm like, oh, I'm starting to get the hang of it, and I'm like going back and forth, you know, from one side to the other, going still really slow, still really sketchy, still pretty terrified. And I learned this later, but I was going toe side, which means I was facing upward, you know, up the hill, had my back downhill, and I caught an edge, and it just took me instantly just backwards, you know, falling backwards down the hill, just smack. And that's what's crazy, is I wasn't even going fast. I caught an edge and just like boom. So I fell backwards down the hill, right, smacked the back of my head just clean, because there was nothing to catch myself. My arms went back to the side, and I started tumbling. But that initial hit, and I had a helmet on, of course, I had gear on, but that initial hit, when I hit the back of my head with a helmet on, it was a moment. And I've hit my head pretty hard a number of times doing different things, but that was a time when I can still remember, and I knew it at the moment. I had this thought, I was like, my eyes are open. I know my eyes are open, but I can't see anything. It's like my eyes turned off. Like my vision had just shut off. And that, in that moment, was just an observation. And then a couple of moments later, when I still couldn't see anything, but I knew my eyes were open, was terrifying. And then a few seconds later, I started to be able to see again. And so I had this terrifying couple of moments where I was like, what is happening? I can't see anything. And then, you know, a couple of moments later going, oh, it's fine, everything's fine, I can see. And then to a little while after that, when I got to thinking about it and going, I don't think that's normal. That's pretty scary to think about. Don't want to do that again. And fast forward to a few hours later, when I realized that my butt hurts so bad. And like I was able to acknowledge it was like, you know, higher on my butt towards the middle, and it was super painful to sit down. It was super painful to lay down on my back for weeks after that. And you know, for the first few days I was like, oh, you know, I hit really hard, I'm bruised, whatever. But for weeks after that, and I started talking with people, and they're like, yeah, you probably broke your tailbone. And I was like, really? I would have thought breaking a bone, because I'd never knowingly broken a bone in my life. It's like, I would have thought breaking a bone would have been way more painful than this, right? So like, I was in a lot of pain, don't get me wrong, but I always imagined breaking a bone being just beyond tolerable pain, which apparently that's not always the case. I don't know, because I've not knowingly broken, without a doubt, broken a bunch of bones, or any bones. So I don't know for sure. But apparently, I probably broke my tailbone, and I would not recommend